All right, good morning, everybody. Um, or afternoon, I guess, whenever you're watching this. Today, we're going to spend 20 minutes walking through, maybe a little more, through how to add user authentication into a Next.js application. We already know about leveraging JWTs, web tokens, and how we can kind of authenticate, but this is more of a deep dive, quote unquote. But before we begin, we want to talk about why authentication is essential and kind of tricky, right? And Next.js kind of lets us make it a little bit easier. It lets you render pages server side SSR and client side CSR, or even statically generating them ahead of time. And each mode has its own timing for when you can like safely access tokens or cookies or sessions, all this kind of stuff. API routes and middleware, in Next.js, they behave like mini Express servers. So I know you're familiar with using Express, and in Express, when we use middleware, it basically intercepts the requests that when we send to the server. Then we have the question, do we do stateful versus stateless storing of these logins, these authentications? Do we store it in a session in memory or a cookie? Do we issue JWTs or tokens? How do we balance security against developer convenience? Right, so security, HTTP only cookies or local storage. And hopefully you remember cookies. We'll just touch on it in sessions. Um, Cookies are stored in the browser, right? So if I right click, go inspect, and you just pick it, like where this is, obviously the Seneca site, and we pick, I don't know, where is it? Application. You can click on cookies, and you can see all the cookies that are stored. None in this case, for this site inside of here. You can do this with any site. You can see all the cookies. In fact, the crazy. I don't advocate for CNN, as I say all the time, but if you check out how crazy they have their cookies, right? So they have all of these crazy stuff. These are all the cookies, and um, we can do lots of stuff with these, right? Typically they're encrypted. Sometimes they're not, but we could say, hey, if you're already logged in and you don't want to, the little checkbox that says keep me logged in, we might want to store that in a cookie so that when they close the browser, the user closes the browser and they open it back up, we can say, hey, they want to be logged in. But how secure is that? Do we have to check it? Do they have a token? All that kind of stuff. So, or do we keep it in a session? Remember, cookies are stored client side and sessions are stored server side. The problem with that is that when you have a session and someone leaves the web page, the session gets erased because it's on the server and we don't know when that person's going to be back. We don't want to keep a session open, waste memory. So there's all these kind of caveats that we have to do. If you're ever thinking cookie, how do I remember cookies client and session is server? Just the first letter, right? C client, S session, server for session. On top of that, with user credentials authentication, we have to worry about handling expiry. When do we get logged out? How long can I sit on a page before I get logged out? What happens if they get disconnected? What if we need to? What if the user went in and deleted their cookies by themselves? What do we do in that case? Other authentication things. What if the user loses their password? Right? How do you reset it? So we'd have to build something to do that. It gets quite complicated. Oddly enough, or not oddly enough, the history behind this, the first known login system on a computer was actually I didn't actually know this. I read this up recently. Something called the Compatible Time Sharing System, CTSS. It was made by MIT, and this was a program that um, let people log in to computers. I know this sounds silly, but and then they can use the computer for running their programs. Now that sounds weird because we all have computers, we have laptops, we have phones that are super powerful, way more powerful than the ones in 1961. But back then, you couldn't have a computer at home. So this was the first login system that allowed you to share a huge server. And that's where these kind of logins came about. This was one of the research that I did. The login system was super simple. It had username, password. It was stored in plain text. You couldn't even really hack into these things. There was no internet or anything like this. And that's pretty simple passwords. the simple password stuff, it really did stay into existence well into the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, like 1990s and early 2000s. I heard someone say the 1900s the other day. Crazy. Um, and even when I was starting out, there was PHP applications that stored your password in plain text, and then the hackers figured out, oh, okay, yeah, people are doing that, so we can steal everyone's passwords, which people still do it today, or find encryption keys, blah blah blah. But an evolution from this was there were so many hacks, and so many people kept the same password regardless of what site you were on. Right, it's password 1234. And if someone hacked one of the websites, they actually ended up getting access to all of these people's websites, right? Because they have the same password. Not the greatest thing. So a workaround from this, and even encrypting the password, on the server database, there's not always a way to unencrypt something. Not yet, but there probably always is. But if you got the encryption keys, then again, same kind of issue. So this thing called tokens were invented. So we don't actually save the password, we hash the password so that you can't um, see it, but you can see the hash itself. And when you run the algorithm on both ends, it checks if the hash works. If you ever see these websites like this, hold on, this one is MD5 checker. So um, MD5 was a very common way to hash a lot of things, not just passwords, but to check if your actual software is the right software downloaded from the correct website. How that works basically is you run an entire MD5 that on all of the code or words in or bits in a file, and it will give you a unique ID based on the amount of words and letters and whatever bits, and it will give you a unique number. Some people used to have MD5, and you can't go back from it, right? You can't an MD5. Let's see if we can find one that will do it for us. Yeah, this is a file. Let's see. This is an MD5 is a hash. Let's see. MD5 creator, maybe. Yeah, here we go. So if I type in password 1234, generate a hash, you can see here it is. So what would happen is I would generate this, use an MD5 hash on the client side, then send in this hash to our server, which would then check if it's correct or not. The problem with things like these MD5 hash generators, because this hash can't be turned back into a password, what these generators do is they'll save this password and associate it with this MD5, and then now we have a breach. Anyway, moving on, we'll talk a little bit about um, the last thing. So you've probably all heard of single sign-on SSO. So this is kind of the world we live in now, where you go to a website like let's say GitHub, right? And you go sign in, and then you can say, "Oh, is it actually?" Hold on, I lied. Maybe they don't have it. They should have it. Let's try Instagram. I don't know. Would they let you? Yeah. So you know how Instagram you can log in with your phone number using your email and password. Instagram handles this on their end, and then you can log in, or you can log in with Facebook, right? So this is kind of a single sign-on. You can use your Instagram account or Facebook and some other websites. You can log in with GitHub or Google, and they call this SSO. So Google basically, well, I wouldn't say Google, but users grew frustrated with repeated logins because they now a lot of us knew that you can't use the same password on every site, and then you have to remember it. And people were doing like password 1235, whatever, right? And that became annoying. So instead, I can't remember who came up with this. Let's check. So it looks like there's some conflicting things that happened. I remember when this became kind of mainstream, there was this thing called OpenID, and they tried to standardize logins across the entire internet. It took off between like developers such as myself at the time, but it didn't really take off with everybody. Yeah, I remember this. It was crazy. Not crazy. It was interesting. Um, but yeah, when was this? 2007. Yeah, there you go. And it was a good start. And then people started using this. Google started to take over. Blah blah blah. And now you can log in with basically anything. There was some controversy about this because it was allowing one company effectively to own all the usernames and passwords or login authentication for every possible site out there. And when that started happening, companies started popping up. Auth0 is one, Okta. There's a few others. Firebase, right? AWS Cognito. I think Azure. Next Auth.js. There's like lots of these different authentication platforms that make all of the things that I said earlier easier, right? But we need to know, I think it's good to know how to program this ourselves, even if you're using authentication from someone else. And we're going to use a little bit of help. We learned last time about the JWT and doing the logins ourselves. And we're going to use Next.js authentication to help us along in that part. So what we're going to do is we'll grab, um, pardon me, go to authentication in Next.js on web422.ca, drop down to example code, click authentication in Next, and you'll get this GitHub repo. You can grab the whole repo if you want, but we're going to work with vehicles-ui. There's a complete version here that you can reference if you don't like the video. And if you don't want to clone it, but it's good measure to practice cloning. So let's actually do that. We'll do git clone, and then we'll change to the vehicles UI directory, and then my app. Right, there we go. Clear this up. Right, so if you don't want to git clone, you can just grab the zip, and we're going to work in the vehicles dash UI folder. So first things first, as we know, npm install, and then we should just test it to make sure that it works. After this does the install, we'll do npm run dev. And how do I know to do npm run dev? Just as a reminder, typically, if it's a node program like this, you can go into the package.js. Well, first of all, I would check the README file, and the README will tell you it does right here, right? And don't forget this is in Markdown, so we can view this in actual Markdown. It looks like this, right? And we can say, and here it says, first run the development server, npm run dev. If there's no README, which would be bad, you can always check the package.json, and you can go under scripts, and you can see whatever the script is that we're running, right? So we're doing npm run the dev script, which actually just runs npx next dev. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So, oops. Let's run it. Make sure it works. And let's see. Oops. Go over here. It looks like it works. There's our vehicles page. And I think we're ready to go. So first things first, again, you can follow along with this. I'm going to, not skip anything. I just do things my own way. But if I was building an authentication system, and I don't want people to be able to log into, certain pages, what I would first do is I would create a folder that houses all of this code that I'm going to put in, right? And, you know, we call it utilities, login, whatever. I'm going to call it lib for library, right? So we have our lib folder, and then inside of our lib folder, I'm going to make a file called authenticate.js. And inside of here, I'm going to think of the functions that I would need, right? So the very first one that I would need is authenticate, because I'm going to have to determine if the user is a real user or not, or that actually has an account. So I'm going to call this authenticate user. Sometimes you call it login. It doesn't necessarily matter. And it's going to take two things: username, password. Pretty simple, right? And then we're going to just add some logic, and maybe we'll just maybe we'll I know we could just copy this, but like you're saying, let's stub it first. So we'll just even say return true, in general. But in our authenticate user, we're probably going to say connect to the authentication API, which we're going to create, right? It'll be something like whatever URL authenticate. I don't know, login, something like this, right? And then and by I mean connect, I mean post. Then we'll get the data, whether the user is logged in or not. Yes, no. Do login request, and then we're gonna set a token, and this is gonna be a built-in function. And if everything's okay, we're gonna return something other than true. But this is just basically the kind of the logic that I was thinking. What else would we need? Um, let's say a user visits back to the website, and we'll just get this. So we want to check if they are authenticated. So we'll need this, return true, just for now, and a couple other things. So I'll come back to, maybe we'll just talk about it now. So we do need a function called set token, right? So that, um, we have accessors to the actual tokens. So token, and we're going to store this in local storage. Actually, we'll just do set the token. We'll come back to the code. We're also obviously going to want to get the token, right? And I guess we could delete function. Do we have a delete? Let's see. It's probably remove. Yeah, remove token. So remove token, get token. Like, what's the difference? Get token. Why is it recommending two of these? Why do we get and read? Let's figure that out. Oh, I see what they're doing. This is so that we can read the actual data that's associated with the token, not the actual token itself, right? So I think that's weird wording, but maybe it's standard. I didn't write this original code. Anyway, so here's our authenticate function, or our authenticate class, right? And it has our functions in here. Now, I'm going to copy and paste these in just to make it a little bit quicker. So here it is here. And I commented this. I don't think it's commented in the solution. So you can take a look at this. So obviously, we're going to use some functions that are already built into Next.js, and then we have our set token, which sets it to our local storage, right? And then we can get as well. We can read the token. Obviously, this is the payload that gets decoded. It tells us, if it's valid token is present or not. This checks if we were actually logged in, or this, well, technically not logged in, authenticated. It's a slight difference. We can remove the token, if you actually click log out. And then there's our most important one is this authenticate user. So our authenticate user, you got to remember that even though that we're building a Next.js app and everything's in the same folder, technically we have an API built into this, and we're going to call our own API. So that's what this does. See how it's like await fetch, which is JavaScript to call, other um, URLs or IP addresses. Then we have process.env.next public API URL. So that's going to be whatever's in our env file, which, right now is localhost 8080. So this will be replaced with that and then login. So it's going to post that, post our user and post our password, right? Now, when you log in, here's something to note. You're saying, like before I said, oh, it's really bad to have a non-encoded username, non-encoded password, because technically any Wi-Fi, any network we're on, someone else can read the traffic. Now, these things are encrypted when we're passing them in quote unquote plain text, but when we do this post, when it goes over the network, it's encrypted by using HTTPS. In this case, it's not because we don't have an HTTPS cert, which means it's a huge security risk because this is going across all of our networks, and we could probably actually see this um, in plain text in Wireshark, something like this. We'll try that later. I did forget something here. I'd used JWT decode, but I don't think I installed it. So npm I JWT decode. So we have to install that module. Then just run your dev again. So don't forget to do that. I did forget to the. Now what? So it doesn't really change too much. We still have that. We need a login page. Very simple. So we're gonna make a brand new login page. So open up pages. I think, do we have login.js? We don't, right? So we're gonna make one. Right click, new file, login.js. And again, you can grab the code from over here if you want to. I think this is it right here. Right, pretty easy. Again, this is just a simple login page. So if I go here, login. Oh, oop, what did I do? Authenticate, import lib authenticate. Did I not call it? Where's my lib folder? Oh, I didn't even put it in the right folder, right? Look, there it is up there. So I got to put it in my app. There we go. And to use SSG, please remove get server side props login. Oh, you know what? I wasn't using React Bootstrap. We are going to use that, so that it caused this error. Uh, where'd it go? Oh, what the hell? I thought I screwed up. Oh, there we go. This is good. Okay, so we should have our login page. Let's, in fact, I'm going to add that to the header because why type it in all the time, right? So under navigation, there's home vehicles. Let's do login. I don't know if this is where it should go, but it's where it's going for now. I think it should go on the right, but we'll figure that out later. No big deal. Okay, so here's our login page, right? Simple. If we look in our code here, this should import the Authenticate library that we created, which is under lib right here. And then when we click the submit button, which would be this login button, it should push us to the vehicles page, which will be this one. We haven't secured this yet. We'll come back to that. Let's just check if the actual login works. This handles the submit, which would be this login. Or sorry, it handles the submit literally because it's called handle submit, and then it should again shoot over to there. Let's check if this works. Now here's something interesting. I did try this and I didn't realize what was wrong. Let's just try it right. Log in. It says failed to fetch. Why? Why does it say that? Took me a minute to figure out. I'm like, oh, did I miss something? No, we have our authenticate. Um, we have our login page. What are we missing? Well, remember that our API is on the same server and the same port as our program that we're running. So we have localhost 3000 login, but we're not on the same port as the thing that we're trying to get into. So watch this. So when I did that, um, here's what I forgot, right? So, and this just it triggered an idea. So our program is running on localhost 3000, but if you recall from our last lecture, and if you don't, you should go watch it because we need it, or you need it for this one. If you recall, we're going to have our client, which is what we're making right now, and we're going to have our API, right? And I know I said at the start that you can have them in one, which you can, but in this case, we're not going to. So last week we programmed our API, the simple Node.js one. If you go back, right, Express, you can go back to introduction to JWT, go to the example code, go to introduction to JWT, grab the simple API complete, and you should watch the video because that's where I hook it up to MongoDB, right? And remember we made authentication with um, Bruno, we're registered a user, etc., etc. So what this meant, it just reminded me was that I'm not running our API server, right? So there's no way for our client to talk to the API because it's not running. So open up your code from last week and um, where the heck is mine? I gotta find it first. Right here, right? So this is our API, which is separate from our client, and our API is running on 8080, and our client is running on 3000. right? So this is how we can have, again, this is from Web222, how we can have two servers running on the same computer. In our case, for this one, it's just simple node server JS. This should start up our client API listening on 8080. So that's good. And then I can at least try our authentication. So let's see if this is going to work. So the user's going to be whatever, and we'll just type in, I'm just going to click login, see what happens. Unable to find user HScanlan. This is good news because at least we know our API is working, it's connected. Don't forget, you need to have the other API working in order for our Next.js app to actually work, right? We were able to connect before. Now, I think I didn't. I think I reset, or no, I don't even know the password, right? Oh, it was my password and the username is Harry. So check this out, Harry. If this works, we should be able to log in, which we do. It takes us to the vehicles page. Super cool, right? Log in, Harry, my password. Oh, oops. Username lowercase, I guess it takes that. There we go. Pretty cool. But we're missing one thing. One more thing. Anybody can get to this vehicles page right now. Kind of silly. Oh, this should be populating, but I didn't do that yet. But anybody can get there. What's the point of having the authentication? Well, we're going to add that. We're going to add a layer on the page. So when I say add a layer, we call this like protecting the page, right? So we're going to say, I want to go to the vehicles page and I want it to um, check if the token, excuse me, check if the token actually exists or not so that we can actually display the page. Otherwise, we're not going to display the page. We can say protecting or securing, I guess, if you want to do that. Right. So let's find our code. So original SWR fetcher was this, and now we have to change it a little bit. So we want to make sure, if you recall, we're going to use our get token function for authentication, and we're going to use the module, and we're going to just write a simple, or actually we can do this ourselves. So we're gonna say, where to go? Fetch the URL, and then we're gonna send a header in with the token. So I'll just copy and paste this. Looks like this. Oops, it actually looks like this. Right. So we're gonna get the URL. We're gonna authenticate ourselves, and then actually, you know what? I'm going to save that for part two. So that it's actually in this UI considerations. I'm not going to protect this page yet. The good news is I did fix this, so it's actually loading stuff. But obviously, we're logged in, and what was it? I can't even remember what my password was. My password, right? So go password, log in, right? So it takes us to the page and it fills out the data, which is awesome. But we don't have a logout button, and we don't have, we can't secure this page. If I'm not logged in, I can still access vehicles, which isn't great, right? But check this out. Yeah, I can prove that it works. Watch. How can I prove that it works? Like, well, remember we logged in. So we're logged in right now. There's a token. And where did we save it? We saved it not on cookie, not in session, but we saved it in local storage. So if I right click and go to local storage, you can actually see here's our access token right here. And it's in our cookies. And if you recall, when we programmed our API, right here's our API, we made it so that this API cannot be accessed unless you're logged in, and we proved that before by using the login credentials and getting the vehicle information, right? So this works now because I'm logged in and it's passed the credentials along, and now I can get my list of vehicles. And I can prove this by deleting this local storage. So if I clear this, and now we have no access token, which is the same as logging out. If I refresh this page, we don't get any vehicles, right? Because technically access would be denied for um, this person. But if I log in again, go Harry, my password, logged in, and then there we go. So next up, we have to secure the UI, not just the data, because it would be bad user experience. But I can do that in another video. It's real simple. Actually, you know what? We could just do it right now. So if we check this out. So basically, we want to create something, and this is like a Next.js, I don't know, or personal preference to the developer, but we want to create a route guard, meaning we want to guard certain routes based on if we're authenticated or not. So not just the data, but where we're actually going to go. I'm glad I didn't split this in two parts because basically it's relatively simple. So all we're going to do is create this route guard, and we'll do it inside of components. And all this is basically middleware that allows us not to access a page unless we're authenticated. So then we're gonna import into our app just our route guard. I guess we paste the whole thing in. Yeah, that's good. Really, we just added this and wrapped our um, entire page layout in the route guard. So if you think about what's happening, before we just had layout and then whatever component we're loading, login page, vehicle, index, whatever. But now we wrote some new code that says, and I don't like the wording route guard, but we'll use it because it is guarding the route. Maybe we have to. I don't even know if that's a no. We wouldn't have to. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So inside a route guard, we're gonna check if we're allowed to access the page or not effectively. So it's relatively simple. And I'll just copy and paste it from here. But again, effectively, all we're doing is we're going to check if we have access or not, and if we do, then we'll give the user access to the page, and if not, we will send them to the login page, which is just right here. Right. So this is how basically every website works. Next.js does it's in its own way, but the theory is the same. It's really simple if you think about it. If the user exists, show them the page. If not, don't show them the page. And we could try this out to make sure it works. Um, oops. Let's go into, because we don't have a logout button, which we should add one. But if I go here and I kill the local storage and I refresh the page, you could see we get, oh, that's not what we want. We want to restart the program. And there you go. Sometimes when you change the props, you have to restart the entire thing. So if I click on vehicles, I get redirected to the login page. And if I log in, you can see there we go. And then again, same again if I log out or aka clear the local storage and then refresh the page, it'll take us back to login. Pretty simple, pretty cool, pretty basic, pretty cool stuff. Let's see. That's it for today. There is a test this week, so just watch out for it, and I'm going to release the next assignment. And that's about it. Oh, before you go, just a note. Remember, I said, it doesn't matter how encrypted whatever is, any traffic can be monitored. And if you know a little bit about anything, you can download a program called Wireshark, right? And Wireshark will capture network traffic. And right now, I have Wireshark. Let's say this is just capturing local host packets. You can do this really easily on Mac, but not so easily on Windows. But here's my local host traffic, and you can see all of everything that's happening local over my network. And all I'm going to do is type in a filter. Watch this: HTTP dot request dot method. Oh, it's right here. Equals post, and I'll apply this filter. So now what's happening is this Wireshark is checking my local host, which is my laptop, for any traffic that has a post in it. Now I can do this over any IP address on my entire network or the school or wherever. And if you just think about how crazy this is, watch this. So I'm gonna erase this access token, and I'm gonna click on the login page. And then I'm gonna put in my username and I'm gonna put in my password. This is not encrypted traffic, right? No HTTPS. I'm gonna click login. Let's make sure this password is right. My password. All right. Click login, and then you can see I just did a post, and here's my post. Here it is right here. Um, post API login. This is not connected to anything, right? I'm just monitoring my network traffic. And here's what's crazier. Here's the exact packets that are going across the network. What browser we're using, whatever. You scroll to the bottom, you can see right here. There's username, Harry. And right here in hex is my password. So if you think about how crazy that is, if you're logging in across the internet and it's not secure, anyone on that network can sniff out your username and password. I'll leave that with you. Wireshark is pretty cool. Play around with it. Anyway, have a great day. See you guys later.